All right, children of the light, students of the light, welcome. I just did a short YouTube video post. Can't make this stuff up. I'll talk about it in a second. And I made it on a Dr. Jamanaji, an Indian doctor who's based out of he's out of Florida, and he's a cardiologist, and very good, by the way. I'll link him down in the show notes. But he went through a whole process of showing what you put in your mouth, especially processed food, sugary foods, a thing called lipopolysaccharides that go into the gut, the disruptive gut microbiome, the create leaky gut syndrome, therefore it leaks out into the lymph system and into the circulatory system, creating literally an autoimmune response. And these substances can get into your arteries, your brain, your fat. There's a term called sick fat. So it can get into your fat. And they just did a recent study where they took a visceral fat, abdominal fat, especially for men. Same goes for women though. And looked at it and realized that 50% of the weight was not fat per se, but it was the inflammatory components associated with that fat, because that fat was where the body was trying to dump and store all the toxins, all the crap, all the lipopolysaccharides, the excess sugar that gets converted to fat due to insulin resistance, which is again the bottom line, which is again a part of this cascade. What I'm trying to show you that is the point was that all disease starts in the mouth and the gut. But is that true? Yes, if we're just talking about from a perfectly 3D perspective. And we know we cannot talk just from a perfectly 3D perspective. We are students of the light. So talking from a perfectly 3D perspective would be inappropriate, because we know that in order for something to get to your mouth and into your gut, disrupting the microbiome, creating leaky gut syndrome, creating Crohn's disease, inflammatory bowel disease, and the rest, creating these ultimately heart disease and heart attacks, you actually have to choose what you're putting in your mouth. And what you choose, and excuse my Instagram page, I had to cut it off, but I'll put a link here to this video. What you choose is based on your programming, your environment, your education, your religion. For God's sake, religion is telling you what to eat now, instead of common sense. Your politicians, your agencies, ADAs, AMAs, AEDC, I mean, you know, all these agencies that have nothing to do with your health. And family dysfunction, family programming. We've talked about that before. This is what is the problem. Because if nothing can go into your mouth without a choice, the choices come from here. So I just wanted you to think of it. I wanted to leave you, yes, this doctor's correct. Most diseases come from what you're ingesting. Its effect on your entire gastrointestinal system, especially the gut microbiome, which is a biggie. You have, let's say, 10 trillion cells that make up your body. Well, the gut microbiome alone is over 100 trillion cells. I'll say it again. It is over 100 trillion cells. Did you know that? And so, keeping this gut microbiome balanced, right? These are the good bacteria, right? The probiotics that we are so fond of taking. but we don't know why we're taking it. We don't know what we're taking. We just take it. I'll make a short or a quick video on probiotics, but this gut is so important, because if you end up with leaky gut, if you end up with these lipopolysaccharides going into your bloodstream or your lymph, it can get carried to your brain. It can create depression, Alzheimer's, dementia, senility, brain fog. It can create inflammation in your arterioles, or a thing called arterial inflammation that chronically leads to atherosclerosis, which leads to coronary artery disease, which leads to heart attacks. So I'm going to, even like if we looked at COVID, what was the virulence of COVID? It wasn't the virus itself. It was that the virus itself was able to kick off a cascade of pro-inflammatory cytokines, which are inflammatory chemicals. It's just another fancy way of the medical system saying inflammatory chemicals. And that kicking off of a massively inflammatory response, especially in the lung area, in the pulmonary area, is what was killing people. By the way, you can't take papaya juice against that. Come on now. But yeah, likely if that immune system wasn't on such guard and such watch and overreacting, well, then you're probably not going to have that overreaction. I can't say there's not enough research on that yet, so I don't like to speculate too much. But almost all of the chronic disease we're dealing with starts in the mind, starts with choices. But yes, ultimately, it will trigger out into whether or not this substance is a gut disruptor, or something that actually feeds the gut and the microbiome what it needs. It is a genetically appropriate diet, meaning that it's not processed foods, it's not sugary foods. You don't pick up a food and look at the ingredients and it has 50 ingredients in it and think it's healthy. No, a fake burger is not better than a regular burger. So this is what I was saying on the short, that yes, it is almost everything about, and by the way, this leads to visceral fat. And like I said, that visceral fat is over 50% inflammatory, white blood cells, chemicals, fluid from it's a battle going on in your fat. We call it sick fat versus good fat. Another topic for another time, not for today's topic. And I have to make this because, again, too many of you are coming to me sick, and we can't go on with metaphysical, high-level metaphysics if you're going to be physically sick. So we got to do a little cleanup with the emotions, a little cleanup with the body, and get everything back in alignment. So I would be remiss in not doing my job if I didn't tell you what was going on. This is pro-inflammatory gut biome, increase of cholesterol, but it's a different type of cholesterol. It's a dysfunctional cholesterol called low-density lipoprotein versus HDL, high-density lipoprotein. You're supposed to have both. That's cholesterol. You need cholesterol. You can't live without cholesterol. But when you're ending up with a pro-inflammatory system, you're going to get much more of the LDL, and so the fat balance gets out of whack. But so does everything. The sugar balance gets out of whack. The insulin resistance gets out of whack. The inflammation in the gut, the leaky gut syndrome, the gaps in the gut, the autoimmune responses, the fatty liver, the visceral sick fat, the impaired immune system or hyped up immune system that becomes impaired. So it's constantly at war with with yourself. And so most of you are a walking autoimmune disease. So me included, these are things we struggle with every day. Why? Because raise your hands if you're a processed carboholic, processed food carboholic, fast food carboholic, right? Healthy BS drink carboholic, sugar carboholic. Yeah, these are addictions, but you didn't just get there by yourself. You had a little help, but now it's 100% on you to lift yourself out of this mess. And I'll make a few more videos on inflammation in the gut microbiome. We now even know that depression can be caused by chronic inflammation in the brain. Real stuff, y'all. Real stuff.